Welcome to the Shema Podcast, the podcast for the perplexed, where Torah insights, intertwined through personal stories, as well as interviews with leading Torah scholars, demonstrate the empowering qualities of Torah and mitzvot. For more great Torah learning through Torch, the Torah Outreach Center of Houston, go to torchweb.org. Now to the show.
It's hard to believe that we're already gathered together for another roundtable. Of course, we have the festival of Pesach upcoming. It was just a few weeks ago we got together to talk about Purim. And right after Purim, we have the march to Passover. Of course, this is the festival that we celebrate, that we remember, that we relive the Exodus from Egypt. And it's a 7-day, 7+1 day festival. We have the Seder, of course, that every Jewish family gets together, drinks the 4 cups, asks the 4 questions, navigates through the Haggadah. We withhold from leaven, from chametz. We eat the matzah. There is so much happening during this festival. And of course, we thank you that you came to join us, to join the Torch Roundtable to talk about this festival. Of course, this is not going to be comprehensive. We get together every festival to just chat and discuss. We don't compare notes. We just get together at the Torch Center, my colleagues and I, and we talk about the festival. And it's very helpful because it gets us in the mode of the festival. And we hear some ideas and we discuss them. And I hope y'all are listening and enjoying. And I'm very excited for this edition of the Holiday Festival Roundtable, the Pesach Roundtable here in the Torch Center in Houston, Texas. And with me, going around the table, we have the incredible Rabbi Aryeh Wolbe. He is, of course, the executive director of Torch and the host of many, many different podcast shows. Go to your favorite podcast app and subscribe and like and download. Even if you don't listen, just download. That's also important.
We just do the cliff notes to the Rabbi Yaakov Wolbe podcast.
And you have your own thing, and that's great. And next we have Rabbi Chaim Bucsko.
Hello.
Hey, he is he runs our young adult division. Plus, he is the rabbi and founder of the Torchwood Shul Synagogue Center Community. I don't want to define it for you, but he's also the host of the incredible podcast, What is Judaism? Which
extremely popular podcast.
Very popular. And I got a lot of complaints that it went offline apparently. And the reason why is because your co-host went to Israel, but now I gather he's back in Houston. So I hope to see that resume sometime soon.
As a Shem, back in action.
And of course, we have the now former Torch board president.
Let's call it different, because if there's one,
I thought you were a dictator for life.
President Emeritus.
If there's one title that's higher than being the president of the board of Torch, it's being the past president of the board of Torch.
Oh, he's the past president. Well, yeah, but I had thought that you had secured this forever, that you were going to write it out, but you
need fresh blood.
Yeah, we need some well, no, I think your blood is plenty fresh, but we're happy that you're still
Russia.
Here.
He's like president for life.
No, I was thinking more like Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, benevolent dictator for life, something like that. The Ibn Saud family, something, the Windsors in the Commonwealth. But thank you for being here, of course.
Well, I do want to stake permanent ownership to the email president@torchweb.org because it's on my intro to my podcast. So
yes, okay, so you just keep that.
It's yours.
But we could just we could give the new president at torchweb.org.
Exactly.
And then finally, you have me, Yaakov Wolbe. It's great to be here. We're talking about Pesach. It's the Pesach Roundtable in the Torch Center. Let us begin, Rabbi Aryeh Wolbe.
So it's so wonderful to talk about this incredible Yom Tov of Pesach. Pesach is perhaps the number one observed holiday in Jewish households around the world. And there's something so incredible about Pesach that it's not a memorial day. It's not a day where we just commemorate something that happened 2,000 years ago. But at the end of Magid, the end of the longest part of the Seder, of the Haggadah, we say, B'chol dor v'dor, in every generation, Chayev Adam liros es atzmo ki'ilu hu yatzam mitzrayim. Each person must feel as if he personally had gone out of Egypt. This, I think, is the most incredible part of the entire Seder, of the entire Haggadah. It's not just an evening where we eat fine foods, bitter herbs, matzah, and drink 4 cups of wine. It's the idea here is so much deeper and so much greater that we need to get to a point where we feel as if it is me, Aryeh Wolbe, who left Egypt on this night of Pesach. I was in Egypt and I was taken out and God split the sea for me, and all of the miracles that transpired there happened to me. And that's not an easy task. I remember my grandfather telling us at the Pesach Seder that he met with Reb Chatzkel Levenstein. And Reb Chatzkel was the icon of emunah, of real clear faith, knowledge of Hashem. And he asked my grandfather toughly, "Do you believe in Hashem?" He says, "Of course." "Do you believe in Yetzias Mitzrayim, in the Exodus from Egypt?" He says, "Yes, of course." He says, "You believe that there were 90 donkeys for every Jew that were filled with spoils, with all of the gifts that the Egyptians gave them? You believe that?" He says, "It's hard to imagine that," but he says, "Well, that's what you need to believe, because that's what happened." That means get into the mindset. I mean, think of what was going on over there. Like, imagine if we had 3.2 million people, which is approximately the size of the city of Houston, all evacuating through the sea with 90 donkeys apiece filled with merchandise, filled with the riches of Egypt. I mean, it's an unbelievable sight to behold.
Can I ask, why is that so important? Why is it important to believe the dogma that this event occurred? Why is that so significant?
And I have a question too. I have a question too on this, because I never heard this before, but I heard that the Jews was like, it's time to go. We got to go. Can't let the bread leaven. We got to get on, but let's just grab our 90 donkeys and all our wealth. So
that was a commandment from the Almighty. He instructed them that for the whole night that we're going door to door, picking up everyone's gold and silver.
Okay,
just for the trip. We'll be back in 3 days. So and that was the divine mandate. So they had to do it.
Nice.
So the reason why I think it's
only
important.
One person who wasn't looking for gold.
Moshe.
That's Moshe. That's right.
But he got paid back with the sapphire chips from the second tablet that he chiseled out. So God says, that's for you. Everyone else got the donkeys and all that. He was collecting the acacia wood for the tabernacle, and he was collecting the bones of Joseph that was promised to be buried in Nablus, Shechem. So,
but to Rabbi Bucsko's question, why is it so important?
Because over here, what does it say? It says, Chayav Adam liros etz atzmo. You have to imagine yourself going out of Egypt, just the way they went out. I think that this is, to me, when I was going through the Haggadah this year, preparing for Pesach, this is something that stood out. That it's not just, let's tell the tale that happened to them. This happened to me and to you and to each and every one of us sitting around the Seder table. This happened to us. And to try to put ourselves in those shoes, to imagine the walls of water and all the fish in the water, and just putting ourselves into that frame of mind. This is our miracle. Ki'ilu hu yatzim Mitzrayim, the Haggadah says, as if you left Egypt. This is not Memorial Day. We don't commemorate an event that happened 3,300 years ago. This is an event that happens to each and every one of us at that Pesach Seder. Now, there's many commentaries that explain, you can understand it as being our own little Egypt that we have, our own little exiles that we're dealing with. And, we're all trapped in certain things. Some people are trapped with money, and some people are trapped with their materialism, and some people are trapped with their careers. Fine. And this is a way to break out from our bondage, so to speak. But the whole concept of getting out of Egypt, the whole concept that we have to liros es atzmo ki'ilu hu yatzim Mitzrayim. To me, that's a big thing. I don't have any tips here of how to make this a real living experience for us, but to do whatever we can. They say that the great sages would walk around their Pesach Seder carrying sacks of heavy, potatoes, but to imagine what it was to be a slave in Egypt. And to, not just in story, not just in words, but to actually act it out as if this happened to me.
In the Shema it says we have to love Hashem b'chol levavcha. And there's two bases in there, which means that we need to love Hashem with two of our hearts. The heart that has the Yetzer Hara in it and the heart that has the Yetzer HaTov. So I heard once that the Yetzer Hara uses a tool against us called fantasy. And we imagine all kinds of things that the Yetzer Hara tries to trap us with and daydreaming. And so why don't we use that tool that the Yetzer Hara gives us, use it for Hashem? I mean, you don't have tips? We could use our imagination. I mean, we're so far from childhood that we can't fantasize.
Where did the 3.2 million person figure come from? Well, the only number that we know is that there were around 600,000 males.
There's 600,000 males between the age of 20 and 60. You double that for the women.
Why would I double that for the women?
Because they're the same amount of women.
I'm contesting that.
Okay.
I'll tell you why.
There are more women.
I'll tell you why. Because we know that the Torah tells us that the more that they were battered, the more that they were beaten, the more that they were oppressed, that resulted in the proliferation of the populace. And we know that the men worked more than the women did. Consequently, I could perhaps argue that maybe there were fewer women because the men had this unnatural growth, or the supernatural growth.
We're told that the women were oppressed as well. Maybe the men worked hard.
Maybe they were more oppressed. We know that the Levites were the smallest, right?
Right.
So there's this idea. Why would the Levites the smallest? They were the smallest because they were not enslaved. And the more someone's enslaved, the more they grow and proliferate. So maybe there weren't the equivalent number of women.
But let's go with the number that there was. Then you add, so that's just 40 years, 20 to 60 men, women.
Maybe they didn't live that long.
1 second.
They were old
so
people.
1.2 million. You add the people who are between 60 and 80 or 100 years old. You add the children, or many more children under the age of 20, about the same amount. You're already at 2.4. You add the Erev Rav, who were a third of the population, the Egyptian oncomers, and you have 3.2 million.
Okay. That's the math.
The number that I've seen written in Sfarim was about 3 million. About 3 million. More or less.
3 million, and then how many donkeys is that? If everyone has 90 donkeys.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of donkeys. What is that, 270 million donkeys? How large is the donkey? Okay. Maybe we should have planned out what we're talking about over here.
Either way, it's a lot of work to prepare for Pesach. Yeah, I had many of my students over the years who told me, Rabbi, you should watch the 10 Commandments, the movie. And the truth is, I ended up once watching it, I think on VHS. For those of you who don't know what VHS is, go search it on Google. And it was actually a little bit insightful, even though so many facts are wrong, but it was insightful to give an imagery of what it may have looked like when the sea split, when the Jews left Egypt, to just get an idea in our minds. So again, it's, I think, the big task of Pesach, is particularly because the mitzvah is to tell it to your children, to talk to them about the Seder, to make it real for them, to not just, it's a story that happened 3,300 years ago. Yeah, the Jews were slaves and now they're free and now let's eat. Is the food out already? It really is to get into a real life experience, so to speak, of what it was to experience those miracles. That's it.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Rabbi Wolbe. Rabbi Bucsko, you spent many, many hours preparing for your talk over here.
Well, hours, maybe years.
Years.
I'll share something that I noticed once at my Seder a few years ago, and it struck me. And it was a big insight, and I never saw this in print anywhere. I don't know if there's any legitimacy to this, but it seems right, and you can decide for yourself. First, I had a question. We're taught by our sages, we have a tradition that only 1/5 of the Jews, and that's the larger number in this debate, but at most 1/5 of the entire Jewish population in Egypt got out and survived and crossed over the sea and ended up receiving the Torah. Only 1/5 of the population. And then we're also taught that even that 1/5, all of these people were idolaters. And they were also the ones that were steeped in the 49th level, the maximum level of spiritual defilement before they were just completely lost. So what merit did this 20% have? Like, who was the 80%? How bad were they that they didn't get out? I mean, how much worse could you have gotten? So what was the determining factor? What made it that this 20% got out? And even though they weren't worshiping Hashem, ostensibly they were doing idolatry. And so what is it? And we're also taught that there's a parallel between the Exodus from Egypt and the ultimate final redemption. And it has been suggested that a similar event will occur, that only 20% of the Jewish population in the world will survive and will make it into the times of Mashiach. So what's going to be that determining factor? Well, I think that the answer is in the Haggadah. And it's in the section where we read about the 4 sons. And one of the 4 sons was the wicked son. And the wicked son says, "What is all of this service to you?" And he excludes himself. He says, "To you." He doesn't say to us. And you respond to him in kind. It says you break his teeth, you answer harshly, and you tell him, "Hashem did this for me. He took me out of Egypt." And you say it in an exclusive way, implying that had you been there, this wicked person, had you been there, you wouldn't have been saved. You wouldn't have been taken out. So this is the paradigm for the person that didn't make it. He must represent the 80% because he was the one that wouldn't have gotten out. And what made him the Russia? What made him be the one that didn't get taken out? It's because he excluded himself. He said, "What is all of this service to you?" And he didn't include himself. So he said, "Yo, you're not including yourself? Then you're out." And what comes out is that this 20%, they weren't great righteous people. They were also spiritually defiled. But they had one thing going for them, is that they identified as Jewish. I'm a Jew. And that's it. So what comes out is if you're on the team, you make it. I mean, you might not have a great batting record, but you're on the team. And this is, I imagine anyone listening to this podcast is already there, identifies as Jewish. The fact that you're listening to this is a pretty good indication of that. But if you have family members, if you know anyone that is teetering on this boundary, it seems like this is the answer. I mean, the more we love Hashem and dedicate our lives to revealing Him in the world, that is our mission. But if you're looking for salvation, what's the baseline? What's going to make sure that our family gets to the next level? Just knowing that we're a Jew. Just having that. I mean, if you look at even Dasan and Aviram, 2 classic evil characters in the Bible. And these were Jews. They were terrible to Moshe. They tried to have him killed. They rebelled against him later. They took Korach's side in the great rebellion against Moses. But these people made it out. These 2 made it out, and they, in fact, were told that they even had their own private splitting of the sea for themselves. And they made it out because no matter how terrible they were, while they were taskmasters for the Egyptians, they still had compassion on their brothers. If the Jews were going to be beaten, they took it upon themselves because at the end of the day, they said, we're Jewish. So no matter what ideology a person has, no matter what kind of behavior they're engaged in, Pesach is a time, it's the great equalizer that if you're a Jew and you stand up proudly and say, I'm a Jew, you're in. That's it. Final redemption. So I hope that that's a consolation for some of us. It could be at least a baseline goal for our brothers and sisters that are forgetting who we are. But you decide for yourself if that's something worth taking into account.
Well, I absolutely love it. And I'll tell you, there's a famous midrash that says what you're saying explicitly. The midrash says, well, in what merit did the Jewish people leave? And it gives a list of things that aren't even mitzvos. It's like cultural things. They kept their Jewish name. It was Reuven and Shimon. They kept the Jewish garments. They spoke the language of the Jews. Those are not even mitzvos. I have a passing Yiddish, but like we speak English. And the garments, you buy it at, J.C. Penney. You probably go to like Nordstrom Rack. I don't know. But we buy garments that are universal garments. We do mitzvos. That's what differentiates us. The Midrash says explicitly, the merit that the Jewish people had to leave was the fact that they were distinct culturally. They were culturally. They were cultural. I can't say that word. Culturally. Okay. They were cultural. Can you say it for me?
Culturally.
They were that.
Like Elmer Fudd. Just pick a different word.
Yeah. Culturally. They were Jewish. And that is the merit that they had. And I think it's a brilliant connection between the Russia, that the Russia says, oh, it's for you, it's not for me. That's why he wouldn't make it out, because he's divorcing himself from the public. And by doing that, you're part of the 80%. And in the 80-20 rule, you are out. Very amazing idea. And I think it's also nice. It's also nice to know that, we just had Purim, and you recall what you said on the Purim podcast. Not the controversial part that you said. No, in the Purim podcast, you were saying, if I'm not mistaken, what you were saying was that, if I'm not misremembering, you were saying that you grew up, you didn't know anything about Purim. Hanukkah you knew about, Pesach you knew about, but right. Purim was just totally foreign. Isn't it nice that the last bastion, so to speak, of religious observance for most Jews is everyone does a Pesach Seder? Everyone does a Pesach Seder. Everyone acknowledges this event that kind of differentiates the proto-Jews that didn't make it, the 80% that didn't make it, from the 20%. And by coming to the Seder, they're saying, I'm part of that 20%. I'm still part of this family. And maybe someone may have strayed, and they may be very distant in their behavior, but there's something I can't say it again. Culturally connecting them to their people, to their heritage, and that they're clinging to no matter what happens in their life. So it's a nice, heartening thought that you're saying, that even though there is this fear, this sword of Damocles hovering above us, saying that, hey, if Messiah comes, it's another Exodus, and it's an Exodus just like the first Exodus. 20% maybe will make it, 80% may not. It's comforting to know that, there are a lot of, I don't know what percentages, but there are many, many, many Jews that may be distant behaviorally, religiously, spiritually.
I'd say about 20%.
Keep a Seder?
I'm just because.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. But there's definitely a lot more people that keep the Seder than do many other mitzvos.
Here's my dilemma. This isn't really the model of the podcast, but let me pose this question to you. Based on what we're saying right now, I'll give you an example. I was having a conversation. I was learning with a student today, and he brought up there's a rabbi, quote unquote rabbi, of a stream of quote unquote Judaism, a Jewish woman who says, I am a rabbi of atheist Judaism. And that's the quote unquote religion is atheist Judaism. And he had even sent this woman an email and asked, how could this be? And obviously you can't question that kind of thing. She responded not very amicably. But let's take someone like that, someone that has that kind of ideology, where they're totally rejecting the principles of the faith, but still can't let go of being Jewish. Like how? Like
it
why?
Sounds so oxymoronic, right?
Right, exactly.
Atheist and Judaism.
I was trying to.
I didn't even know this existed.
There you go. Now you know. Well, I was trying to make sense of this because it doesn't make any sense. Like, well, how could someone arrive at this? And it must be that they're having such a conflict of identity that they identify so strongly with these modern values that exist very prevalently in the Western world today of progressivism and atheism, but still has such a strong identity of being a Jew in their heart. And you can't reconcile those two. And so it's not very logical. It is paradoxical and oxymoronic, an atheist Judaism. But it seems to me that that's where it's coming from. So the question is, if they're still holding on to that, but they're very adamantly screaming, there is no God, what about that?
Well,
person?
There's the famous midrash that says, God says, if only the Jewish people abandoned me, but they kept the Torah, because the light of the Torah will bring them back.
Well, is that Torah?
But it is
That's the midrash. Don't look at me. I understand what you're saying, because there is the Torah that's a sama maves, like the Talmud tells us. It could be a potion of death. But there's this idea that there's something that's still maintaining their connection to the religion, even if they've divorced or they've severed, or at least nominally rejected, repudiated, repelled their relationship with the Almighty. If there's still something that's connecting them, maybe they could still be salvaged, so to speak, to their people. But it's a fantastic insight that you're sharing, and an idea that I never knew that there's such a thing. But look, yeah, it's a good point.
I have seen the humanistic, same thing, humanistic Jews, which basically means no God. But it is logical, though, because you do see many Jews who don't believe the Torah is true, which means they believe it was written by men who lied and wrote those came from God. So therefore, the origin of the Jewish people is a group of liars, and they hold steadfast in their Judaism.
This is a different level. But this is believe in God.
But same thing. But okay, true. But it is logical. It's totally logical because they have a Jewish neshama, and their intellect hasn't been given the information to reconcile with. At their core, they know, and that's why it is actually a logical way of responding to the world.
So they won't be able to explain why they want to eat matzah ball soup and chew matzah, because there's no logic behind the matzah, right? but they feel just compelled to do it for reasons that are just
they will not let go.
They're not conscious of it. Interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
Proud Jew. And I would like to add something to this idea of the 80-20, the 80-20 rule, as we call in business. But what I've read and the way I see it is a little different. It wasn't Hashem saying 20% you made the cut, 80% no. It's not what happened. We just had, he took their neshamas. They died during the 9th plague. They saw all those miracles, or plagues, if you're an Egyptian, right? What they decided to do, the 80%, was they said, look, we have all this newfound wealth. We're living in the most opulent place in the world. They chose not to go. And this is a very powerful idea. Those who left is because they chose. That's it. And what Hashem was saying is, you don't want to go? The whole reason I created the Jewish people is for this moment, is to follow me and to serve me. And so the 80% who didn't want to fulfill their destiny and just sort of sit back and live on the riches of Egypt now and prosperity, they weren't serving any purpose in his world. And I think in every moment in time, that is the deciding quality. Maybe you don't know a lot of Torah, you don't know anything about the mitzvot, maybe you question a lot of things, but when it comes down to it, do you choose to follow Hashem? That is the deciding factor.
And if I could give myself a little plug, a couple of months or years ago, the dates blend into themselves. I spoke about this idea on a Parsha podcast.
I know that everything I'm saying is something I heard from you in a podcast and I'm record stating.
No, but you just reminded me. You rejiggered my mind that, they all died in the plague of darkness, which is the 9th plague. We know that there were 10 plagues. How come the Almighty didn't allow them to see the 10th plague? Maybe they would leave then. So I speculated that maybe everyone is given the opportunity to witness the reason for change, the necessity for change, the mandate for change, the imperative to change and to leave, but you're not given everything. You're going to give like 9. You'll see 9. You have a chance to see 9 and that's it. You won't be able to see everything because there has to ultimately be some part of it that's a leap of faith. Once you witness the death of the firstborn at the stroke of midnight, it's already beyond the point of free will. With 9, you could still say that up to 9, it's still something which is, it's pretty remarkable. We would call it miraculous, but there's still wiggle room for the heretic. And what I speculated is that there has to ultimately be some part of you that you're willing to just go into the unknown. As the verse tells us, that you went after God. Bamidbar, in a barren land, Baretz Lo Zoru, a place with no vegetation. There has to be some sort of leap that you made, and you'll be given a lot of nudges and encouragement, and you'll have the clarion call to leave, but you won't have everything that you need. Ultimately, at the end, you're going to have to lean into it and decide and opt to change, and if not, well, you're part of the 80, not the 20.
Well, it's like any relationship, which Hashem was the whole reason you orchestrate all this, was you have to trust in the other party, especially after they've proven themselves to you that they're reliable and they're dedicated to you. You have to take trust, and that's what Emunah is. Now, I'm going to go in this way, the way you tell me, and the things I don't understand how they're going to work out, they're going to work out. That's the whole message of Pesach, right?
My question to what you said, Rabbi Yaakov, is you're saying that leap of faith, which always triggers me, because the Torah actually doesn't give us a commandment to have faith. It tells us to have knowledge of Hashem. It should be a knowledge. So we're supposed to get beyond that leap. Maybe just to get us started, we take a leap. But then the more we investigate... Well, it's certainly rooted in logic, right? It's certainly going to be rooted in logic. But if there was no room for free will, then we're in the realm of angels or animals. Either one. Pick your choice.
Right.
There has to be the point where the person makes a choice. And if there is a miracle that removes the capacity for free will, like happened at the stroke of midnight, well, then there's no choice. Maybe it's not a leap of logic; it's a leap of will. Call a leap of faith, not a leap of faith, a leap of will. And yes, there's enough. There's 90% of what you need to know. It's like the great business person. You don't wait until it becomes widespread knowledge. If you wait to capitalize on some sort of business idea until it's consensus, well, you lost the opportunity. So you have to know exactly when you have enough evidence to be able to make that call, make that leap, because otherwise you're not going to be able to capitalize on the opportunity. Right. It's a similar kind of thing. If you have 100% evidence and it's all clear and it's undeniable, there's no way to wiggle out of it, well, there's no more free will anymore, and it's too late by that time, that point. So we could call it a leap that still demands some degree of free will. Certainly it's rooted in logic, but there has to be something that the person themselves contributes towards this exodus.
Right.
What an interesting. So this is nice. We get together and we don't talk. We don't collaborate, and all these interesting conversations come up here, and it really gets my blood flowing, and the whole feeling of Pesach, and I'm starting to salivate over that matzah. Not quite. Okay.
We should have been recording this.
That would be nice.
We got it. Okay, we got it.
It's being recorded?
Yeah.
You can't recapture it the second time, right?
Everything's being recorded by the Almighty.
Oh, yes, but will it go into the podcast?
Godcast.
Dan.
Yes, I would like to add a little more to what Rabbi Aryeh Wolbe was saying. When we get to the Pesach Seder, we're not trying to go through a checklist. There is something that we're there to accomplish. And if everyone stops and contemplates what is actually happening, what we're doing, and what we're going through, exactly what those Jews went through, those are things that we are all going through today. As an addendum to this whole conversation about Emunah, the Egyptians just believed that God created the world and then set it in motion and walked away. That's why the first Pharaoh that Joseph spoke to acknowledged God. When Moses came to Pharaoh and he used the different name of God, the Yud Ke Vav Ke, the God that is not only created the world, but is governing all the affairs of mankind. Pharaoh could not recognize that concept. The concept hardened his heart because he wanted to be God. His ego, Pharaoh's ego, would not allow him to even comprehend that he wasn't in control of everything. And there's so many of us, and I say all of us, moments in time where we know there's a God, but do we really know this whole idea of Emunah, that he is governing all of our affairs? Because if we didn't, we would never have a worry. Our only concern would be, did I daven? Did I go learn? Did I fulfill mitzvot? Did I follow halakha? Did I acts of kindness? Like concerns about livelihood or health or safety, that would never cross our mind. So we're all sort of oscillating, some of us at much higher levels, but we're all oscillating in some regards. So the idea of the Pesach Seder is to remember that the first thing Hashem did was demonstrate, I control all of nature. And one of the things that Rabbi Wolbe shared with me, that Rabbi Cutler shared with him, that he heard from a Rebbe, sure it was a Chabad Rebbe, but he said something, you're going to love this, Rabbi Yaakov Wolbe. Because I was thinking about like the last line in the Shema. I am Hashem your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt. I am Hashem your God. It is true. A little repetitive. You already said, I am Hashem your God. What Hashem is saying is, I am Hashem your God that took you out of the land of Egypt. That same Hashem that demonstrated all those miracles is the person reading this. I am the same Hashem to you, the one reading this. That is true. That is the mindset. I mean, we say this in the Shema twice a day. We read so much about the Exodus in our Siddur. Hashem is wanting us to recognize this because we're all struggling with those same things of thinking that the world around us is controlling our affairs. And you think about really where we're going from that night, where we're trying to catapult ourselves to, is the following Yom Tovim of Pesach is when we were standing at the Sea of Reeds. So the Jews had seen all this stuff, right? And now they're looking at the Sea of Reeds. They're seeing Egyptians coming at them from one angle, wild animals off this side. According to logic, there's no place to go. Now, Sun Tzu, in The Art of War, what he did was he put his troops in that position and said, you're either going to die or you're going to defeat the Egyptians.
Burn the boats.
Right, exactly.
Cross the Rubicon.
God says, no, that's not what you have to do. I'll fight your battles. That's not the Jews' role. He said, you walk that way. And they said, there's water. We can't live. We'll drown. And what he was showing us is that when we have Emunah, there is nothing that we can stand in our way. When we march towards him, following his will, nature becomes subservient to us. And that's the whole message here is we're going to get past those final 2 days of Pesach, and guess what we're going to go back to? Our lives. All these challenges, business and relationships and all these things. And Hashem needs to once a year put us back in the same situation, get us to contemplate the fact that the Hashem that took us out of Egypt and controls all nature is your Hashem. And whatever's standing in your way, you just walk forward, walk toward Shavuos to get the Torah again. And anything that you think is standing in your way, Hashem will move out of your way.
What a beautiful lesson. I hereby nominate you back for the role of president.
Great. Congratulations. You earned it.
Grover Cleveland. Non-consecutive terms.
No, when you said that, it's the same. It's so obvious that it's ridiculously obvious that it's the same Hashem that dealt with Moshe and Avram Avinu and all of these great. That same Hashem is my Hashem today. I mean, it's like obviously true, but my perspective is so pathetic that I haven't considered that, I guess, until, or at least as consciously as I am right now. That was eye-opening.
And you think about like where Pesach ends up in the calendar, like after we get past Sukkot, It's sort of like the entire Jewish history is compressed into 1 year for us, right? We get past Sukkot and then we go into exile. First, the Greek exile, Hanukkah, where there's revealed miracles. And then we go into the Babylonian exile and we have Purim, where he's wholly hidden, where we are now, right? Total darkness. He's navigating everything, moving things, but we can't see it until the outcome. And then he brings us to Pesach and says, I know you're right now in the final generation, our generation. We're in the Purim era. He's behind the scenes. And then he brings us to Pesach to remember, like, I'm still there. This is the purpose of the final exile, is what is going to make everything permanent for you, is that you can hold on and have emunah in me even when I'm hidden. During Mount Sinai, it was all pushed down and given to the Jews. This time, we are going to pull it down from the heavens because we're going to have emunah in the whole and trust in Hashem and follow him even when he's hidden. That's what's so powerful about the opportunity that I think the Jews in our generation have.
And that's why I believe, following your thought of the year being the history, we know that Nisan is the month of redemption. And we were originally redeemed in Nisan, in this month, the month of Pesach. And we will be in the future redeemed, because this is when we wrap things up. And maybe it'll be this year. Hopefully it'll be this year. But 1 year it's going to be in Nisan, that's when we actually earn that permanence, so to say, the permanent redemption that we are all awaiting for.
And hopefully we are all prepared for it. I think that's what Hashem is waiting for. When the national revelation happened at Mount Sinai, as you taught me in the Midrash, the Jews couldn't handle it. And they kept dying. The neshamas could not be contained in their body with that type of revelation. I think what Hashem is waiting for this time is when the revelation comes, you're going to be able to hold it.
Yes. Okay, so I prepared something here to share with y'all. I know I like to go at the end, or I don't know if I like to, or that's just the way it is. So most of the audience already left, so it's fine. I could say controversial stuff, spicy stuff.
They wait around for you. That.
Oh, maybe.
They fast forward to this
you
point,
are so
and this
sweet.
is where they're starting.
You are so sweet. So this is what I'm going to share, something a little bit different, but I like it. So we know there is a concept that the first time that a word appears in the Torah, it's always symbolic of the essence of that word or that idea. It's a well-known principle that's been well established in our literature, in our philosophy. So I noticed that the very first time where the word matzah appears, it's in a very unusual place. Of course, matzah, that's not just the mitzvah of the festival. It's what we ate in Egypt, halach ma'anya. This is the poor man's bread we ate in Egypt. It's the food that we baked on the way out of Egypt. We ate the matzah for a couple of weeks. And the name of the festival is Chag HaMatzos. It's known as the Festival of Matzah. So matzah is Pesach, like those are synonymous. The first time it appears is a very unusual place, chapter 19 of the book of Genesis. Of course, the book of Exodus is when the second time it appears. It appears once in the book of Genesis, in a very strange, unusual place. It appears in the story of Lot. Abraham, he's circumcised, and he has the three people, but they're really angels masquerading as men, and they come, and he makes this big, lavish meal for them, and they tell him, well, you're going to have a son, and there's the whole laughter. We know that story, began in Parshas Vayera, and then he accompanies them, and then they go to Sodom and Gomorrah, where Abraham's nephew / brother-in-law Lot is living, and they're going to save him, and they encounter Lot, and he rushes, and he tries to get them to come in a way very similar to Abraham, to come to his house, and he's really insistent, and they agree, and the verse tells us, chapter 19, verse 3, that they said, no, we'll sleep in the street. And and he insists. And I said, okay, you insist enough. Even the angels, right? If you push the envelope hard enough, even the angels will yield, will capitulate, will succumb. And it says that he made them a mishteh, vayas lahem mishteh. He made them a banquet. Umatzos afa vayochelu. And he baked for them matzah, and they ate. Matzah, matzos, plural, matzos. And Rashi says, it was Pesach. And that's why he baked them matzos. Now, of course, this is fascinating because this is exactly a year before Isaac was born. And we know that Isaac was born exactly 400 years before the Exodus. So this is exactly 401 for our Canadian friends. 401 years. That's the big highway in Canada, in Toronto. 401 years before the Exodus. And he's baking matzah because it's Pesach, which is a mind-bending idea, which we've talked about in previous podcasts, not to toot my own catalog. But we spoke about this in previous podcasts, that there's something about this day. This day was always Pesach. It was always Pesach. And the way you celebrate Pesach always is with matzah. And everyone knew that. Abraham, well, not everyone, but Abraham knew that. Certainly Isaac knew that as well. And even Lot knew that. This was the day that's designated for redemption, and thus when the time came, it was brought to full expression with the actual Exodus. But just a fascinating thing, Rashi tells us, according to the Midrash, it was Pesach. Now, interestingly, that same day, these same angels were by Abraham, and the verse tells us that he baked them bread. So I saw someone speculate, well, that was before it was Pesach, and that was already the night, it's not yet Pesach. So this event is happening the night of Pesach, the baking matzah. Fascinating. But to me, it's interesting. The very first time where matzah appears, where Pesach appears in the Torah, it's with Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, with the angels coming, and they're going to destroy that city that night, that same night that Egypt gets destroyed, and the Jewish people flee. Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed, and Lot flees with moderate success, shall we say, or checkered success, because his wife turns into a pillar of salt, his daughters survive. We know the story. So isn't it interesting that, Lot, he's the first person who bakes matzah? Isn't that a surprising thing? I also noticed, after he leaves, he finds himself in a cave with his daughters, and he drinks a lot of wine in 2 successive nights, which does seem, maybe reminds us sometimes of the Seder, but that's just maybe incidental. We also know that Lot, with his daughters, becomes the forebearer of Moab. And Moab, that's where Ruth comes from. And that's very significant because Ruth is the great-grandmother of David. And David gives us Solomon, which gives us Messiah. So Lot is a very significant character because he is the antecedent of Messiah. There's something about Lot that makes him worthy, at least in a small percentage, of being the forefather of David and Messiah. It's an astonishing thing. So Lot is important. He represents something very noteworthy. Obviously, the Torah gives him a lot of attention. He's the first time we hear about matzah, and he also happens to be the first, happens to be one of the antecedents of Messiah. So I was trying to figure out, what about Lot is similar, as symbolic of matzah, of Pesach, and what's the redeeming qualities? And we kind of have to struggle to find something about him that's good, that's admirable. So I did think, it's obviously you say, well, he did kindness. Abraham did kindness. And Lot in a very similar way, even though Lot's a little corrupted because he offers his daughters, take my daughters, do whatever you want to them. So it seems like it's a little bit warped, but he does do kindness on an Abrahamic kind of level. If you compare the story of Abraham running to them and bowing before them, washing their feet, it's very similar how those stories are structured. My grandfather, blessed memory, used to say that Lot went to Sodom because he wanted to be like Abraham, to bring the sinners of Sodom back to God. Now, Abraham was very close to Sodom. He was right in the outskirts of the cities, and that's why he had to relocate. Chapter 20, verse 1 of the book of Genesis, he had to relocate because now Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed, and now he has to find a new place to pitch his tent and to spread his craft of faith. So there's a lot of positive things that we could perhaps say about Lot. But I think, and this harkens back to what was mentioned earlier, I think that the quality of Lot, maybe the greatest quality, is that he changed. He was in Sodom and Gomorrah, and he was appointed as the justice. He was the leader. And then he's told it's time to leave, and he doesn't have the benefit of 9 plagues. He doesn't have any of that. And the angels come, and he leaves, and he tries to get his sons-in-law to come in his matadors. It doesn't work. He grabs what he can, and he hustles out of there. He abandoned his home territory, the place where he had settled. He left all of his stuff behind. He left his comfort zone. He even left his married daughters. He did what we're trying to emulate, so to speak, or what we did emulate, what the 20% emulated in Egypt, and what we're trying to take away from this festival. We know the Talmud tells us that one of the nicknames of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is chametz. It's the sa'ar shebe'isa. It's the leaven in the bread. And of course, it's not a coincidence. And when we spend the whole time before Pesach looking in every nook and cranny of our house for chametz, of course, that's supposed to be understood on a more homiletical level that within us, we also have a Yetzer Hara, and it's squatting inside of us, and we're trying to remove it. And it's kind of insidious, and it's widespread and covers every part of us, and we have to kind of look through every nook and cranny and find out where exactly is the Yetzer Hara operating within us. What do we see? Jewish people, they left Egypt. They hustled out of there. They kind of departed. The Rambam famously says that the Paro is also symbolic of the Yetzer Hara. Paro is also symbolic of the Yetzer Hara. They left the Yetzer Hara behind. 20% who were brave enough. And that's what Lot did. And you think about matzah. What's matzah? Matzah's bread, right? But it's bread missing something. It's missing, there's an absence. There's not a speck of leaven. There's not a speck of Yetzer Hara. There's not a speck of Sodom. And that, I think, is the central element of Exodus and Matzah and Pesach. And that is that, if it was Pesach 400 years before the Exodus, it means that there's something about this day that still exists for us today. And this is a theme that, of course, was featured many times here. There's something about this day for us right now. It's not just looking back and remembering or envisioning. We have to leave. We have to find the area of our life, the Sodom, the leaven of the bread, the Egypt within us, and we have to abandon that, and we have to be like Lot in a small way, to become someone new, to change. And I think Lot is a very good person to represent this.
He remained corrupt.
Exactly. I'm going to say that.
He was wicked. Right?
He was wicked. Some of us may say, Abraham. I can't match up to Abraham. Yes, I'm supposed to aspire to Abraham, Moshe. But it's very hard for us to say, we'll be like these great titans. Lot is someone that we could all identify. He's got plenty of flaws. And we can even look at his flaws and say, you know what? Some of his flaws, thank God, I don't have. Mm-hmm. But you know what he did? Even someone like Lot, he had his own exodus. He had his own exodus from Sodom. He left. And that's why, even though if we're not going to be perfect, at least we should be like at least we should be like Lot, to leave something behind. Have Pesach matter to us. Have some lasting takeaway that there's some part of our life. Yes, it's well documented. Lot was flawed after he left. It's well established. But there was some part of Sodom that he left behind, and unlike his wife, he didn't turn around. He maintained that change. And therefore, he's going to be a worthy representative of matzah. Because this is what really we're supposed to do. And you know what? We're not perfect. None of us are like Moshe, like Abraham, not like the giants who ate the manna for 40 years. But you know who didn't eat manna? Lot didn't eat manna. But he did bake matzahs. And we may not be perfect, but there should be some sort of, at least ideally, there should be some sort of change between who we are before Pesach and what we emerge from after Pesach. And you know what? Even Lot, he changed. If Lot did it, we can change as well. We should not have a half-baked matzah or a half-baked Pesach. We should allow the influence of Pesach, the transformation of Pesach, to have some sort of impact upon us, to change in some way. Leave some aspect of your Egypt behind, some aspect of Sodom, of the specks of some flecks of Yetzer Hara behind. And like we said, unlike Lot's wife, there should be something about it that we just don't turn back. And you know what? Lot, he's not a hero. He's got lots of problems, as his name indicates. Lots and lots and lots of problems. But he is, in fact, someone who can be the standard bearer, the torch bearer of matzah. His story can symbolize matzah for us because you know what? He changed. And if he changed, maybe we could change as well. Those are my thoughts for Pesach. May we all have an incredible, uplifting, invigorating, meaningful, productive Pesach. We should clean our houses from chametz, clean our hearts from the Yetzer Hara, have a wonderful Seder, 2 Seders for those of us in the diaspora. And it should be a valuable experience for us. It can be, of course, as we know, my grandfather, bless him, used to always say that Pesach is the one night where you can have exponential growth. The rest of the year, you got to trudge along. One step follows another. Small steps. Don't jump too hard. You may crash down. Pesach, those rules are discarded. One day you could go from negative 49 to positive 49. It's the one day you could do it. But at least we should have something. We should take some little bit like Lot and leave something behind. That's my thoughts. And I hope everyone has an incredible Pesach. And thank you all for being here and for joining us for this roundtable. And final thoughts, everyone here?
Thank you to all of our listeners, and thank you to all of our rabbis here.
Oh, thank you. I guess, Dan, you were just given smicha.
That's right.
What's that?
He just ordained you as a rabbi.
Great.
Definitely.
So maybe to be rabbi at torchweb.org. Anyhow, my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. Everyone, please share your email address.
Wolbe@torchweb.org.
The Average Rabbi at torchweb.org.
And still, president at torchweb.org.
Some things you just don't give up. Maybe we'll get together for Lag BaOmer, maybe Shavuos, if we don't get canceled for this podcast. We'll get together again, please, God.
I always love doing this.
Shavuos, something, please, in the future. I really enjoyed this, and thank you so much. Signing off from the Torch Center, Houston, Texas. Chag Kasher V'Sameach.
Happy Kosher Pesach, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting Torch so they can continue to spread Torah wisdom to the world by making a donation at torchweb.org and clicking donate in the top right corner of the page. And if you would like to get in contact with our host with comments, suggestions for future topics of learning, or questions for him or his guest rabbis, you may email him at president@torchweb.org.